So you can see our next team up for the iSpace Space Resources task is Team Atlas from Bangladesh. So you can see them setting up in their base station. Their task time will start shortly, and our field crew are quickly readying the field to make sure that they can get underway. So the team has placed their rover on the starting point for this task, which is smack bang in the middle of our challenge arena, because the team has spent the previous 2 days, essentially, they've landed and descended from the lander and investigated the local area. So it looks like the team is underway. The rover is moving. So this is Team Atlas from Bangladesh competing in the iSpace Space Resources task. So they are making their way over to the 2 ilmenite samples that we have prepared on the field. So this rover is quite fast. It has made its way there in no time at all. And it looks like they have some sort of probe on top of an extended arm in front of the rover. And I assume that they'll be using a linear actuator to try and, you can see it just moving down there, to try and probe the sample and see if they can determine what the ilmenite content in that sample may be. So the rover is quite speedy. They're trying to line up for that second ilmenite sample. And so they'll get points for imaging that sample, being able to show the base station judges that they are able to see that sample on their screens that they're using in their base station and using to operate this rover right now. So the rover is now making its way into the crater that we have at the back left of the arena. You can see the base station operators there looking at the monitors and their screens and trying to use the information presented to them to navigate around the surface. So there are 2 icy regular samples that we've got prepared in the crater at the back of the arena, which you can see on your screen there. So the team will be able to receive some points for both imaging those sites, just being able to show the base station judges that they have, they can see the sample sites on their screens, and then they'll receive further points if they're able to tell the base station judges in the presentation that will happen after the task what concentration of water is present in those samples. So Team Atlas are currently on the field competing from Bangladesh, and they've come up against a decent amount of adversity in this competition thus far and showed an extreme amount of resilience to still be in the competition competing in this task today. It's fantastic to have them here at the challenge and have them competing in the iSpace Space Resources task today. For the first task on Thursday, their rover was a little bit overweight, and so they had to make some quick last-minute changes to reduce the weight of the rover, which you can see with their makeshift chassis, and by also removing some of the two wheels actually from the original rover to bring it within the weight constraints for the challenge.
If you have liquid nitrogen over here, we could freeze it.
I think it's because they have a higher, like if you're in a, this sounds poor, income a lower corresponds to the higher cost of income. So they've got more, you know, they've got like more demand, more experience, something like that.
I don't live anywhere near KFC. I live in like mountains. I live like near Daniel.
What was the Emerald? That's so cool. Yeah. Drive. It's such a bad one.
Yeah. If I go in the morning, it's about 5. I get like the tail on the peak hour to get in at 9 a.m.
Yeah.
But it's dry. It's one day.
Not that far from it.
Yeah, I know people are like twice as close and they're like, yeah, it's like 45 minutes.
20 minutes to go back. 25 minutes.
So you can see Team Atlas's rover has, I think it has deployed that sensor which is on that boom or that arm on front of the rover, and they've got they managed to attach a camera to that boom, which is facing down that white spherical thing that you can see, which I imagine is what they're using to make sure that that camera is lined up with the sample. So you can see with the picture in the bottom right there is the Team Atlas team in their base station. So they're controlling this rover from their base station where they have no line of sight to the rover out on the field. And so it means that all of the decisions that they're making, all of the control inputs that they are doing has to come from the sensor output and the camera images that are being fed to them wirelessly from the rover into that base station, which can be incredibly difficult to do. Obviously, we're doing this to mimic exactly the conditions that you'd face when controlling a rover on any other planetary body, or particularly the lunar surface. This rover is quite speedy. Blink and you'll miss it. And it is backed up, and it might be lining up for one of the other samples.
Jaga
So, a reminder, if you've just joined us, this is day 3 of the Australian Rover Challenge. You're joining us for the iSpace Space Resources task. On the field right now is Team Atlas from Bangladesh, and they're competing in this task, which requires them to do 3 things. The first one is to prospect and potentially process 2 sites of icy regolith. Regolith being the soil that's loose topsoil on the lunar surface, and try and process those samples that we've prepared and try and produce some liquid water. They'll also get points for telling us what the concentration of water in those samples is. The second portion of the task is going and imaging some ilmenite samples. So ilmenite is a mineral which is found on the surface of the moon, which is metallic and magnetic and is useful for a range of purposes such as 3D printing on the moon or building other infrastructure. And the third component is the presentation, which the base station team will be conducting at the conclusion of the task after they've prepared their findings, prepared their results, and then will be quizzed by the judges in their base station to present their scientific findings. So this task has been designed exactly to mimic the activities that hopefully space agencies and other entities might be conducting on the moon, potentially this decade. Water is an extremely valuable resource because it can be electrolyzed to produce hydrogen and oxygen, which can be used to produce fuel on the surface of the moon, or what we say is in situ. In situ being the IS in ISIU, which stands for in situ resource utilization, which is the blanket term used for essentially getting resources or where they exist. So the benefit and that you can get from producing water on the surface of the moon means that you essentially don't have to take it with you. The Apollo program, back in the moon landings, they had to take all of their fuel with them to the lunar surface to get back to the Earth. Now, the moon doesn't have as strong a gravity well as the Earth, so it requires a lot lower mass of fuel to do so. However, if we're able to, all of the mass that you have to take from Earth means less mass that you can take to the moon, which is going to be critical to meet the scientific and engineering goals in the next coming years. You can see the Team Atlas rover is maneuvering once again, and they've got that probe on top of that arm at the front of the rover, which they might be trying to line up with one of the water samples to try and determine what content of water might be present in that sample. Meanwhile, we've already seen Project Scorpio from Poland compete in this task earlier this morning, and they'll be conducting their presentation with our judges in the base station as we speak. So it looks like the base station team is trying to debug and trying to figure out exactly what move to do next based on the information coming to them directly from the camera feed live on the rover that they're receiving wirelessly to their base station. You can see some of the challenges in operating this rover. They were only able to have those cameras on the rover itself, so they wouldn't be able to see past those crater walls that we've created on this challenge arena.
No, it's from around the world.
So Team Atlas has 40 minutes to complete this task. They're almost halfway through. They've been able to make it over to both of the ilmenite samples that we've prepared for them on the challenge arena, and they've then made their way into the mock crater that we have, and been able to make their way to the icy regular samples that we've also prepared for them on the surface. So Team Atlas from Bangladesh are currently competing in the iSpace Space Resources task. You can see their base station crew. They've got a couple of RC controllers there, which they use to control their rover. So teams use a wider range of options to control their rover, which is really interesting to see what the different solutions are, what they've been practicing with, and what they've finally landed on. So they've got two controllers there. I believe one of them is used to control the rover's movement forward, backwards, and to turn. And then they've got a second controller there to move any additional actuators. So for the previous tasks in this challenge, for example, the post-landing the Australian Space Agency post-landing task and the ELO-2 excavation and construction task on Thursday and Friday, respectively, they would have had their arm attachments on the rover. They would have used that second controller to operate that arm upwards, back, left, right, and all the other joint movements that they can possibly do. The other solutions that I've seen, joysticks are very popular. They're relatively intuitive, especially if you get the operators able to practice with them, practice, to be able to get an intuitive feel for operating their rover just by seeing the video feeds that they can see on their screen. And then another option that we've seen time and time again is the trusty keyboard. Whether it's on a laptop, on a computer, moving the rover using those keys is a tried and true method. So the rover is quite speedy. You can see quite nicely the track that the rover has used to make its way into that crater and then around to the front of those samples. Reminds me exactly of what wheel tracks on the moon might look like once we get rovers back on the moon. Of course, a couple landing last year on Slim had a couple of smaller rovers that landed from the Japanese Space Agency, which is very exciting. And of course, Chandrayaan-3 from the Indian Space Research Organisation, or ISRO, landing last year, descending from its lander and going to investigate the surface at a latitude of around 10 or 15 degrees from the South Pole.
I think I can go get a hat from them. Like the cat. Do you want a hat? They can go get one. It's a free one. Yeah. Can you? Yeah, I'll look up.
Với lần bỏ lại này. Cái trường hợp con ý xỉu nha. Có cái lưu này.
No, it's terrible.
Với lần bỏ nha. Ra mình từ ho.
So what were you doing? I think you told me while I was there that I don't know if it's
Very, very light.
yeah, now it's clicking together.
But yeah, you're right. It'd be like, like 2 kilos. Yeah, 2 kilos and upwards. So,
Yeah, that's it. That would be helpful to
I think yeah, this one was really good. We like imaging. We just got someone goes away, gets the imaging. That's like 20 points right there. And then you can use it to come back. So yeah, we get 5 points for imaging, right? Yeah. And then we could do some analysis while you're trying to drill or something like that. And if you run around with like better than what so you run with things to and come around and pump it back up. It'd be very good. It would just require like yeah, you have to like double up your communication. What's it about?
I haven't recognized.
No, you rate it. I mean, that's the whole.
That's more like a legendary.
Yeah.
I don't really know.
Yeah.
I'd like to learn though. I've been showing like yeah, because I'm chassis, so I'm like very hard to like kind of respect. So as soon as I'm like really serious about stuff, I think I try to understand what's going on.
It's cool, and I like it. Like I like it.
ba phần khổ ha đủ cái gì ha như vậy cái u ảnh chưa đấy
Yeah.
There's like there's those ones that you trip, but there's ones that are like I might
tí gì hay like up
No, no,
someone that's wrong, and then someone that's technology, and there's more that are like just someone's size, so the other one's like so long. I don't know, they're a bit more like I don't know let it go on about performance. Yeah, they're more like they're not doing like how do you use it kind of. Yeah.
I think it's still good. I don't think
Bếp uống cái mà hơi gì ta trả lời cho họ chi tự nhiên này là chiên này chia chiên nóng chiên ập lại cho chiên này chia rồi nó mùi nó cũng we already know mà we can't remember everything we think
we get better data.
That was crazy.
Yeah, that's why. Yeah. So that like goes forward. But it is like I would get like I'm gonna give it a shake tank.
Yeah.
So yeah, I got that.
So we've got Team Atlas from Bangladesh currently competing in the iSpace Space Resources task. They've got, I believe it will probably be about 15 minutes left in this task. So they're gaining points at the moment for going to our icy regolith sites, just under 15 minutes, sorry, and investigating them for water, for their water content, and also to our ilmenite sites as well.
Oh, I think we uploaded this. It was very nice.
Yeah, just so that like you get those at the end, just because then you're not gonna accidentally like push it in the wrong way and snap.
I think that's actually what it is. Yeah.
So I think that's the main one thing we're trying to something you want to. Then after that,
Yeah.
things that you can do your chassis.
Lúc bộ kệ hồi nàng chị lấy gì cái gì
No, because I can't take multiple. If you go yourself, then you can get one. It's just the cat stand.
About
rồi lắm nha chính nha
But they might think we look the same, so maybe not.
I don't know I wear mine
I don't know how to show it.
cái hồi lúc mình kệ kệ
Like I didn't really notice when I looked at most from last.
whoever
Yeah, like I was very
Oh,
bright.
if you like up luôn chị kệ hết đăng xe đâu nhận like up luôn lúc khử lúc thôi kệ khét rồi lúc khét và bắt khử khử lắm kệ like bắn cái gì này bắn cái xe nàng trò lúc cái
But I'll go with
khử lên
you can look out. Yeah, maybe
I'm
and go with Bug.
not very good. I doubt
I think
that.
he wants a hat as well.
Yeah.
I definitely have doubts.
I think it's like I think you can do it, but I think
Like I like the yellow hat as well. And they said, oh, it doesn't have the logo, like the Australian logo.
as opposed to doubling up in new version. The doubling in new version is like very expensive.
Oh, yeah, no, I agree with
Souvenir.
the old board adjustment.
Yeah, or even outside of this revive.
Yeah.
Or yours. They did try that. Yeah, that was pretty good. That's the other point. So, yeah.
I think if you want to stick with current steering mechanism we got, so if we make a new one, you can't warranty, it would be very similar.
That would be
And so
very
operators train on both and get similar experience.
yeah.
But I agree, not making too big, too silly. Unless we made like mini Rovers.
Yeah. Yeah, that's The maybe I think they only make two.
Yeah, that's
Last year, and it was very like it was like you double everything. You double your like if something goes wrong, you go replace it. You double the cost of that. You want to make a change to the new robot. You better double it. Yeah. No.
yeah, it's millions of dollars.
I think I used chassis like 50 on the new robot. I know. I've been doing that for people twice. But
Yeah, Well,
Yeah.
yeah. They said they mentioned it a couple of times now, like an AI system.
I don't know if we disagree with that. I don't know how that would work. I don't even understand. What was the application?
Just so then, in my eyes, that's just splitting the team. You're just gonna have two Rover teams, one that goes to America, one that goes to Adelaide.
Right.
Because the idea is that you can design more directly for the task, but I don't know. They
Yeah.
have two arms really, so the arm would be the same. 'Cause no one wants to build two arms.
Yeah.
Because the science stuff we already built two payloads.
Yeah, and the reason we also team up for that exact reason is like then you have an ARC that never ever gets to achieve.
Yeah, to go to UR.
Yeah, it has nothing to do for hardware design.
Yeah, exactly. I think, but that was it. Like, then you have a larger design cycle. You have a whole year to really define
Oh no, it's
True.
like outside in the middle, so
half
it's
the
not in a
teams moving
specific
away
campus.
for URC.
They
But
make,
that could just be more organizational.
I think so. I think it's like just like more organization, more realistic. And like, I think we should blow out the time scale. Like, it would be very good. We would disagree with that all the time. To use design cycle. Just like
outside.
just like planning thing. Like being
Yeah.
like this system is likely not to be done in 1 year. Like that is very, very hard. And they're starting that.
I think they have to be something from, especially arms. Sorry,
Yeah.
I don't mean to brag.
No, no,
or
no,
anything,
it's
but
just like-
arms seems to be always perspective. They're like, oh, that's going to take so long. Whatever.
It's like outside, it's just
It's going to take so long. You should start it now.
You should start
So
and
then
push
in
as
2
much as you
years,
can. And then like,
have it.
yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Because now we're at the point where it's like no one knows arms, no one wants to touch an arm, no one
Yeah.
barely wants to even maintain arm because they're scared of break it.
Yeah, it's like a full. It's cost of design change. Just like increases the more complex developed systems. It's like to make a change. It's like you have to change. Like to make a change is very hard.
Yeah.
And then it's like very hard to justify it because you have so many questions.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
I know the arm is slowly working. And same with
So Team Atlas from Bangladesh have just under 7 minutes left in this task. You can see that the rover is still trying to maneuver and make its way around the challenge arena. You can see it moving there into the crater that we prepared for them. And you can see their base station team there working furiously, operating the rover and doing their best to secure as many points for their team as they can. We've got 2 icy regular samples in that crater, which we've pre-prepared for them and frozen in our freezer on site for the last couple of days to make sure they're super hard, super cold. And that'll be a challenge for the next teams who are going to be drilling into those samples and trying to extract liquid water from them. Of course, the higher the water content, the harder the sample. And so teams will have to make the choice between a higher concentration of water, but harder to deal with, harder to drill into, harder to extract, versus a lower water content sample, which might be a little bit easier to work with. Teams will get 30 points for extracting any quantity of liquid water at all. Hopefully we'll see quite a few teams do that today. We've had this task in the challenge for a couple of years now, and no team has been able to extract any liquid water thus far. So I'm very excited to see which teams can. I have heard whispers from Project Scorpio, the Polish team who competed just before Team Atlas, that they may have been able to extract liquid water, which would be net them quite a few points. So the high concentration of water, low concentration of water that I was speaking about previously is also important because there are additional